Hi, first graders. Today we are going to read the text called The Shoemaker and the Elves, and we are going to do a lesson on sequencing key events from the story. So first we'll read, and then I will go over your activity with you. The Shoemaker and the Elves. Let's make a prediction. What kind of text do you think this is going to be? Is it fiction? Information? You're right. This is a fiction story. You may have predicted this was fiction because you can see the pictures are not photographs, they're drawings. So those don't look like people in real life. This type of fiction that we're reading is a fairy tale. A fairy tale has illustrations or pictures, make-believe characters. Sometimes it begins with once upon a time. Let's read. The Shoemaker and the Elves. Once upon a time, a shoemaker lived with his wife in a little village. Although the shoemaker worked hard, he could not earn enough money to make a living. One day, he found that all he had left in the shop was enough leather to make one pair of shoes. That night, the shoemaker cut out the leather and set it on his workbench. Then he went to bed. The next morning, the shoemaker was amazed to find a perfect pair of shoes on his workbench. He called his wife. "Wife, wife, come quick and see. Look what someone made for me." The shoes were so beautiful that a customer paid extra for them. Now the shoemaker could buy enough leather to make 2 pairs of shoes. That night, the shoemaker cut out the leather and set it on his workbench. The next morning, there on his bench were 2 perfect pairs of shoes. Once again, the shoemaker sold the beautiful shoes quickly. That night, the shoemaker cut out enough leather to make 4 pairs of shoes. Just as before, he set it on his workbench, ready to make the shoes the next day. Just as before, he went to bed. The next morning, just as before, there on his bench were 4 pairs of perfect shoes. Once again, the shoemaker sold the beautiful shoes quickly. Day after day, the shoemaker woke to find wonderful shoes on his bench. Shoes for work, shoes for play, shoes to dance the night away. Day after day, more and more people came to buy the beautiful shoes. One night, the shoemaker said to his wife, "We must find out who is making the shoes." So after supper, they hid in a cupboard in the back of the store and watched. Just as the clock struck 12, 2 tiny elves danced into the room. They hopped up on the bench and began to work. As they worked, they sang, "We sleep by day, at night we sew. In and out our needles go. Stitch, stitch, stitching small and neat. Lovely shoes for lucky feet." As daybreak came, the elves danced out the window and disappeared. "How can we ever thank them?" wondered the shoemaker. "We have made a lot of money because of them." "Let's make them some new clothes," said his wife. The shoemaker and his wife bought the smoothest silks and softest satins. They made the elves new suits. On New Year's Eve, they put 2 little sets of clothes on the bench. Then they hid in the cupboard and watched. What do you think's gonna happen? Make a prediction. I think the elves are gonna love their new clothes. When the little elves saw the new clothes, they danced and laughed and clapped their hands. They put on the clothes and twirled around. Then they danced out the window and were gone forever. The shoemaker and his wife were never poor again, but they never forgot the elves that helped them. Every New Year's Eve, they put out a new set of clothes for the elves. And every New Year's Day, the clothes are gone. Okay, now that we completed the text, we need to think about what were some of the key events in the text. Let's go back and think about what happened at the beginning. At the beginning of the story, the shoemaker put out the last leather that he had, and he was not making enough money to support himself. He didn't have enough money to buy food and pay his rent. It said he could not earn enough money to make a living. That means that he can't buy the things that he needs. He cut out the leather and went to bed. Then next, some shoes were made. He sold the shoes and he was able to buy enough leather to make 2 pairs. Then every day he put out leather and the next morning shoes were made. Finally, him and his wife decided to spy and see who was making the shoes. They saw some little elves were making the shoes. They decided to thank them by making clothes. The elves took the clothes, and the shoemaker was never poor again. He decided to make them clothes every New Year's Eve to thank them for helping them through a difficult time. Okay, now today, you guys, for your activity, you are going to sort some key events from the story. You're going to sequence them and put them in order because that helps us remember what happened in the story. So I'm going to switch my share to my paper that you guys have so I can go over that. All right, so you have this key events paper and the directions say, cut and paste the key events in the correct order on the flow map. This is called a flow chart because we're gonna put things in order from the beginning to the end. So you have some events already here from the story. You're gonna read, they're out of order. You have to cut them out and put them back in the order that they came in the story. So let's read them together. At night, the shoemaker set out the leather. The shoemaker found out that the shoes were being made by elves. The shoemaker could not earn enough money. Each morning, new shoes were made. He made clothes for the elves to thank them. So think about what the order was in the story. When I'm doing a sequence activity, I always find the first event and the last event. Okay, those are usually the easiest to remember. Then you can go back through the text and find the order of the middle events. Good luck. See you next time.